I'm Barry Story, I'm Director of the Challenger Center, so I get to welcome you here. We had a homeschool group from the Athens, Etowah area that was scheduled to come today, but because of some of the storms last night, apparently they got hit a little bit harder up there than we did around here, so they're rescheduling. And also, we have one of our GA who is back in Sevier County because of the fires there. And basically, it burned down all the community that he lived in. His elementary school burned and all these things. So we're doing a lot of things around the area here. So I know you guys worked hard to get here, especially with rain, which we haven't seen for a while. So I always ask the question. I know I see some familiar faces, but for people who are new, how many have been to the Challenger Center here before? That's great. That's great. If you haven't been, welcome. A little quick history on the Challenger Center for us who are a little bit older. Remember the Challenger Space Shuttle, and unfortunately the mission and the disaster that happened to the crew, but it was an educational mission, and it was a teacher going into space, and they actually wanted to continue that program. So they started with a Challenger Center that was built very similar to this in Houston. And now we have 42 Challenger Centers all around the world. We have centers in South Korea, Great Britain, Canada, and all around the United States. And this center is 21 years old. Last year we served close to 11,000 people who came here for various programs just like this. So if you have any questions about the Challenger Center, I'm sitting right back there and I'll answer those. But welcome down.
It's always a pleasure, and we appreciate this space so much. There are some empty seats for obvious reasons. Yesterday and last night, and in fact, as early as this morning, or late as this morning, we've had some cancellations. But we will enjoy what we're going to discuss today immensely. In the middle of the night last night, about 1 o'clock, between 12 and 1, I didn't look at the clock. I just heard a noise. We live in Ripon. And I heard a loud noise. It sounded like thunder, but it didn't roll. It just continues. And I said, that sounds like what I understand a tornado sounds like, but I don't see any trees falling down. And I don't hear any ultra danger. So we went back to sleep. And this morning, Woody, where are you? Woody says, we had a tornado go over Red Bank last night. Wow. That's a little too close. This stuff falling from the sky is, they tell me, water. I haven't seen any for a long time, so I'm not real sure about it. But it's consistent with the topic of the day relative to what we're all about. The outdoors, nature, little kids, learning. I am, of all people, most fortunate to have the parents that I did, because my first memories are locked in the outdoors. I don't remember anything from in the house. It's all outside. And when I was 4 or 5, my mother took a course in how to teach preschoolers from nature. Imagine that. It was A.W. Spaulding's wife that taught that course. Some of you know that name. And I was the lucky recipient along with my 1-year-old brother. So we grew up experiencing the outdoors. We always lived close to the woods. I won't go any further than that because further discussion is up to you. Have an assignment number 1. On your table is an orange card, or a green card. It looks like they're not all ones. A 3x5 card, how about that? I'm going to give you 2 minutes to write any question that comes to your mind that you have about preschool outdoor education. Any question that you don't know the answer to. It can be anything. So, 2 minutes. One more minute. Ashley will come around and pick up your cards. These questions become the initial part of our final report. So you'll see all the questions. As stated in your handout, this particular Key Learning Lunch is being co-sponsored by the Wahatchee School. Did I say that right? Wahatchee School? Yeah. Located in Lookout Valley. The director, the founder and director, I think that's correct, is Dr. Jean Lamino, sitting right here. And you're going to hear from her via YouTube. Just ask her to talk. She needs to have the background that it provides, and it's delightful. You're going to hear from her as kind of an intro to the idea. And then you're going to hear from two different parts of the world. First from Switzerland, and then from England, where they have had more years to pioneer what we're doing. Dr. Lamino is traveling around the world and going to be in China for how long? For 4 months. Training people to do forest kindergarten. So we're very fortunate here in Chattanooga to be pioneering this kind of thing for our nation, actually. There are some others, Oregon, Texas, and so forth. You can discuss that at your table, because at every table there are experts in this. We've never done this before, where we actually brought the people who know what we're talking about to the tables. That's kind of cool. But let's start. We're going to do the YouTubes for a few minutes, then we're going to have lunch and talk. Any questions? Okay. Is that the right one?
That's Switzerland.
Oh, no, that's not the right one. We want to. What? It doesn't matter? Oh, okay, we'll start with this one.
This is a forest kindergarten. It is a public school. The children, they can choose where they want to be. Perhaps they want to play by the river, so they can play by the river.
Da ist der Wach, wie man was lernt. Da ist Waldsofa. Das ist auch toll. Ach, schon viel. Das ist doch viel.
Det kom sometimes really
very good back home, and I don't mind that. But if I am with them, I will say, oh, careful, don't go in the water.
I just imagine what would happen in McKee in the winter. Sometimes they can really snow here. They only get in the building when it's extremely snowing.
Work with knives and they cut on wood and makes me a little bit, I think it's a little bit scary, but
I spent the whole day with the kids, and that was the time I saw the kids were even allowed to play with knives and swords, and at first I was shocked. I couldn't even move. In Africa, I don't think I would trust my kid. I'll give my kid a knife.
With this boy who earned a little bit, this was a good experience for him. So he now, oh, it is really hot, the fire.
My son, who went to the forest kindergarten, we need only a stick and a balloon to play for hours. Other son, who didn't went to the forest kindergarten, needs a lot of things to play, plastic things. New research results say there are connections between gross motoric developments and brain developments. If a child in early years can move a lot and in different ways, there is also the brain developing in a way that later on the child can profit from this. For example, in mathematics.
The research is very clear that children learn skills outdoors that they cannot learn inside. One of the schools that my own daughter went to, they eliminated recess, and the reason they said they eliminated recess is that the children get along better, that there's less fighting, which is exactly the opposite, because what we really saw were children bullying other children and being mean to each other because they didn't have the opportunity to solve those problems outdoors during the playground time.
In the last 20 years, I have more and more children who are going to a forest kindergarten or Wald kindergarten, as we say here in Switzerland. And I must say that the kids have much more self-confidence. And actually, I haven't seen kids with a hyperactivity disorder in a Wald kindergarten. And I have seen a lot of kids with a hyperactivity disorder in the ordinary kindergarten.
I'm a teacher myself, and I've been in these regular school systems forever. My biggest fear is that the school, with the structure and the schedule and the appointments and the testing and the pressure, they're stopping the kids from actually becoming what they're meant to be. I found that the forest kindergarten is really, so far, the only place in regular school that I've come across where I think that's really a place where they still have this freedom.
Oh my God, they're going to freeze out here in the forest.
I was very worried about the water.
Once in a while, there's a child, I'm freezing.
What did you think when you came from England and you first saw kids playing like that?
It freaked me out.
4-year-old Nicola Towns is joining her kindergarten friends in the forest. They're not on an excursion. This forest is their kindergarten.
That's not tårnet, her også tårnet op i den her skov. Prøv at se. Tårnet falder så.
It's freezing today, only 5 degrees. But even when it's raining, snowing, or minus 20 degrees, you'll find these children playing and learning outside.
Den der kravler der. Så her bor de inde under om vinteren. Så sådan passer insekter på dem selv. De kan bo inde under barken.
It might sound extreme, but it's not unusual in Denmark, where 10% of the preschools, about 500 of them, are forest kindergartens. They're run by pedagogues like Johan Leigård, someone with a university degree in human development.
Nej, hvad godt så? Kommer I bare ned her, eller? I løber bare.
You have a lot of visitors come from overseas to see how you do things here. How do they react?
They are thinking, what are we doing? And when do you learn to go to school? And why there is no fence? And wow.
It's important for young children to learn what it is to maybe be cold, what it is to be wet, and survive that. My name is Julie Sigfridson. I came to Denmark over 20 years ago and was amazed at the outdoor things that young children were doing, and I now live and work here.
Jane's the author of a book on forest education in Denmark. She's brought me to a forest kindergarten near her home outside of Viborg.
He's in the tree and it's only a very thin sapling tree. It's very, very wobbly. It takes an awful lot of balance to sit in that and use both hands at the same time. In an ordinary playground, they wouldn't have the opportunities to develop those physical skills.
Jane runs outdoor education workshops for teachers and carers from around the world, including Australia. While we've been talking, the kids have moved on to their next activity.
Is it something that isn't as dangerous as it looks?
No, it's not dangerous. The children have learned how to use the knives properly. So it's not seen as some kind of weapon. It's a tool for doing something, such as woodling. I think many cultures like to wrap their children up in cotton wool. I don't think that's about a lack of love for children by their parents. They see it in a different way. That in fact, children should have the chance to be free.
So what's your approach to safety here?
You have to use your brain. And if you trust that the kids, they can take care of themselves.
Matty, are you afraid of anything?
I was watching this boy climb to the very top of the tree, other boys hitting the log with a stick very close to each other. I couldn't see You or anyone else?
I was standing up there and I saw it too.
You saw it?
Yes.
You weren't worried?
No. That's a part of the play almost every day. And they learn to be careful. Sometimes they got a little accident. But that's the way to learn. Only once I had to drive to the hospital with a boy with a big in 17 years. So I'm not worried.
And what was the injury?
It was a parent who drove over a foot of a kid.
The world's first forest kindergartens were founded in Scandinavia in the early 50s. Today they're also popular in Germany, Austria and Switzerland. Some locations are more challenging than others. Johann's kindergarten sits less than 100 metres from a fjord, but there aren't any fences because they're not needed.
Why do you stop here, Carl?
Fordi her må vi ikke gå. Man skal have en pædagog med derovre fra, inden man går over.
I think one of the big things that I see here is the amount of trust that there is in Denmark. That there is no formal inspection of kindergartens. There's no one that comes round and checks out that you're doing what you should be doing.
But how easy is it for parents like Nicola's mother Nadia to trust the pedagogues and their own kids?
I know my sisters, so they can run down to the water. I was like, yeah, but they don't do that. You know, they know where they're allowed to go to. They don't.
You trust them. Do you think a lot of it's based on trust?
A lot.
But I must say, I'm happy that I'm not down here during the day because I'm a bit worried when he falls into the top of a tree.
So you're happy that you can't see it?
Yeah, I am.
At Nadia's house, I meet her husband, Paul. He's English. Danish forest kindergartens came as a big culture shock.
In England, kids can keep harming you, like falling out of a tree or something like that. And they won't allow it.
There are just a handful of forest kindergartens in the UK. The US only opened its first in 2007. Australia 5 years ago.
What do you think it is about Denmark that they can get away with that, but they can't in England?
It's hard to explain. I really don't know what it is about the Danes. It's just a very relaxed frame of mind they've got about everything.
One of the main reasons Nadia and Paul have sent both Nicola and her 6-year-old sister Jessica to a forest kindergarten is their fear that the virtual world is distracting the girls from the natural one.
As soon as they come home, what they want to do is play the iPad. That's what they want to do. That worries them. So we try to encourage them to go outside and play more.
Surely not everyone's convinced about the value of an outdoor education. This is Jessica's primary school. I've come here because I thought the teachers might be concerned at how kids from a forest kindergarten struggle to adapt in the classroom.
Do you notice any difference between her and the kids who've come from normal kindergartens?
Not at all. They are all prepared to go to school. My own son went to forest kindergarten.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you never had any worries about how he would go to school?
No, not at all.
What do you think about the idea that the children should be using their time in kindergarten to start to learn some reading, some writing, some maths, to get ready for school?
I think that is work spoiled because of they are not ready. You have to learn them to be interested in learning.
Over the last 20 years, the number of outdoor kindergartens in Denmark has roughly doubled. And now the forest gospel is spreading. Even schools are looking to take the class outdoors.
Now there's a lot of research being done that shows that children are less stressed, that children concentrate more, that children are ill less often, that their motor development is far, far better for being outdoors than indoors.
And a lot of teachers is, getting, yes, I can, oh, it works. So I'm happy.
My name is Yafa, and recently there's been talks on the way we should run things here in America.
This project, Forest Kindergarten, is a partnership between South Lanarkshire Council Ranger Service and Forestry Commission Scotland. It's been running for
Yeah, there it is. There it is. Then we.
I've been most inspired, I know I've been most inspired when I've been outside. I walk a lot, I hike a lot. It's my time to think. And that's where I solve problems. And I solve relationship issues. I've seen children in my teaching experience who were actually diagnosed with ADHD and had all kinds of issues when they were in the classroom. I would take them outside, and they were totally different children. They would be quiet. They'd be focused. They'd pay attention. Nature is soothing. It's calming. There's something about being in silence. And where else can you find that but in nature? We hear the birds singing, we hear the insects, we hear the water flowing. But those are all soothing, calming sounds. And our souls need that. Children need that. They need it desperately. It's a loud world we're living in. We're losing this unstructured freedom that you find in nature because we're so focused on achievement and making all A's and learning how to read and write and do arithmetic before we're even in first grade. The difference is in forest kindergarten, it's unstructured play. Children are learning through their play. And when I think about it, it's really a revival of the way children have learned for forever. They ask the questions, and the teachers are there to facilitate those teachable moments. So we aren't there to tell them things, we're there to listen to their questions and to guide them to finding the answers. So they explore the world around them, using all of their senses, which children are losing that ability nowadays. So that's what drew me to Forest Kindergarten, that whole concept of immersion in nature. They're discovering things constantly. They're turning over rocks and they're finding all the creatures that live under rocks. They're climbing trees, constantly catching minnows and salamanders and looking at the little shells that they find in the creek and the rocks.
So it's a continual exploration and discovery, and through that, they're connecting. They're connecting with the world around them. And these children, when they're out here every day for several hours at a time, they are becoming acquainted with every tree, every plant, every animal, every bird, everything around there, every rock. So because of that, that love of place and learning to love the place where they live, and loving the earth, and loving the people around them, and loving themselves, that's where it all happens. And what our world needs is more compassion, more kindness. The hope is that will expand to include community and the rest of the world.
Okay. Well, speaking of nature, it's now time to eat and to talk about what you've seen and to answer or respond to 3 questions. And the 3 questions are on a handout which you will receive. It's handout number 2. You don't have it yet. Given to you. And that's assignment number 2. Assignment number 1 was the question that you wrote on the card. Assignment number 2 is to, while you're eating, discuss these 3 questions. And you have to, as a table, assign a recorder. And a reporter. It can be the same person, but it should be someone who can grasp the essence of what is being said for each of the questions and write down, because we picked that up. And then someone who can report for your group at the panel after we're finished eating. We will address these questions as a panel discussion. But right now, it's time to eat. And I think we have a picnic prepared, right? So
Yeah, Angie, our super caterer, decided that everybody would be sick of turkey or anything that looked like turkey. But she did make her wonderful pulled white chicken with barbecue sauce. And if you want to make a slider, the buns are down there, so you don't have to jump over the beans. This was hard to set up. But there are baked beans, there's the chicken, barbecue sauce, a tossed salad, coleslaw, potato salad, and lemon meringue pie.
And all that created by a person who endured the flood this morning and water coming in the
6
kitchen.
inches of water from Stringer's Creek, if you guys, it's a lot in Red Bank.
So we are very fortunate to have lunch. Let's see. While they're coming up, Dr. Swafford pointed out something that we need to be aware of. European forest kindergarten includes kids that are older than preschool. In America, we tend to, correct me if I'm wrong, we tend to refer to forest kindergarten as preschool. Is that correct? So we were really hoping in this discussion to focus not on formal school kindergarten age, but pre that, at real, honest to goodness preschool, toddlers, preschool, daycare, those kind of, that level of students.
What age is that?
What age would that be? Birth through about 4?
If you ask me, I'd say to 6.
Well, some of us agree that kids should start school a little older.
Right, and that's, yeah, right. But I think that there's in this area, if we're talking Chattanooga, I teach at Spalding, so I have kindergartners, and I'm noticing a lot more of my families are sending their child to school at 6 and a half. Like, these boys turned 6 back in April, and they are starting school in August. So parents are understanding that, especially boys. So I think that this area is getting more of an awareness.
Are you the reporter for your table?
I guess so.
Okay.
Oh, we're supposed to go up there.
Yep, you're supposed to go up there.
All over the place. They want those questions.
Now, the way we do this is we address the panel, but the discussion is open for questions or comments from any participant in the room. But the panel has the floor, so to speak. And it just in simple response to that final point, I didn't start school until I was 7½. And that was because of all of that time that my parents had spent preschooling me in the woods. And I didn't think anything about that. Nobody thought that was weird. But that was a long time ago. Now, it's weird until we learn the benefits of a new idea maybe. All right, let's address, we don't have to spend much time on question 1 because it was intended to get acquainted kind of question. But if we could go down the list and if you could just share anything from your group that was remarkable as a memory.
Before that, can you introduce yourselves?
Oh, yes. Let's introduce ourselves.
Yeah, I'm Matt Harris. I'm principal at Gilbert Elementary School in Walker County.
I'm Haley Brown, principal at Red Bank Elementary.
Faith Laughlin, I'm a professor of education at Southern Adventist University.
Christopher Hansen, I'm also a professor of education, but here at UTC.
Pam Arner, I'm kindergarten teacher at A.W. Spalding.
I'm Vicki Flessner. I'm the former 24-year director at Highland Positive Methodist Preschool, and I currently own my own business called Placemaker, P-L-A-Y-C, Placemaker, and I specialize in helping to develop outdoor classrooms and designing playable landscapes.
And she's on the board, we'll have you.
Okay. Now, if you remember anything that came up in the conversation about childhood of one of us or one of you at your table, share it.
You should share your own. It was good. Just followed my great granddad through the field to go fishing on the mountain. So I remember the ditch lilies and the honeysuckle and everything. What it smelled like, what it looked like. That's probably mine. A pair of Liberty overalls in front of me. That's about all.
Okay.
Well, Valerie and I shared that we remember being outside from daylight to dark, staying outside. The rule was you come back inside when it gets darker, and when you hear me call your name. And that we had neighbors who just kind of looked out for all the neighborhood kids. Everybody just kind of knew who the kids were and where they belonged and looked out for each other.
I had the privilege of attending a one-room school as a child, and my teacher would often say things like, here are the workbook assignments for the rest of the day. If you get all of these workbooks pages done before noon, we'll take our lunches and go for a hike. I will not guarantee that they were done right, but they were done by noon. Grades 1 to 8.
We all remember growing up outdoors, playing and being outside more often than inside.
Yeah, the whole early to late when the sunsets come in and neighborhoods watching out for each other, and if you were hungry you might go somewhere else and grab lunch. It wasn't always check back. But also climbing trees and like the video showed, not being maybe dad going out, hey cool, look at you to wake up 40 feet up. It wasn't a thing. Like get down kind of thing. So that was those memories of just our parents and even neighbors supporting, adventurous play.
We kind of talked about a lot of different aspects about outdoor play and memories, all the way from just gardening with our parents in the yard, or camping and being out more in the wilderness, and then also just that aspect of friend play, the social aspect of being with our friends all day long and making our own decisions. Covered a big gamut. We even talked about like earth elements, like how being outdoors and exploring, we were exposed to water and fire and dirt and darkness even, which we sometimes feel like all those are things that we have to protect our children.
Did any of you have, did any of your parents, anyone in the room, have a method of calling because you would wander too far?
I have one.
What?
For my kids.
Okay,
Wherever they hear that, their heads start going like meerkats, you know?
okay.
We actually had a brass ship spell. Yeah. Well, I grew up on like 12 acres.
Yeah,
I know.
yes.
We had horses, and so how the horses would respond was my mom came out and yelled, "Hey girls!" Even if they were all guys, or male horses, not guys. So if we wandered too far out in the pasture and she couldn't find us, she would yell, "Hey girls!" for us to follow the horses in.
Okay. My mom had a police whistle. And we lived in the woods, and it would be not unusual to be a half mile away, but you could hear that loud brass whistle.
My mom too.
What?
My mom too.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments about childhood in your own experience or from the experience that at your table? What if all of you were in your 20s? Would your childhood memories be different? How would they be different?
In today's society, it is much more dangerous for children to be unsupervised and outside because of just the way society is. As everyone was mentioning, 50 years ago or less, 40, 30 years ago, children could be outside, could be a long ways from home and be perfectly safe because other people were watching out. But it's not the case in this day and age.
Okay. Yes.
I think we have both parents working, or if there are both parents even present. Too many of our children are in daycares or latchkey kids that have to stay in until mom gets home. So I think it's a different scenario.
So it's a safety issue and an economic issue. Does any of it have to do with technology?
I think there's even a difference in what I would describe as my experience and my brother's experience, and he's 6 years younger than me. And maybe it was a boy-girl thing, but we had one of the very first Ataris in our house, and once that entered our house, I think that changed his free time.
Okay. Question number 2. What was question number 2?
The one we just answered. The one 50 years ago. How do you think that being outdoors in nature is different for preschoolers now than what it was 50 years ago?
Well, yes.
One of the things we talked about was even our living arrangements. So if I'm a family and I live downtown, my access to outdoors, if I'm in the condo or something like that, is much more limited. Or if our subdivisions have captured all the available space, there's not a lot of green space or a lot of things that you can experience close by so that you would feel comfortable turning your child loose and letting him or her go outside.
Okay. Let's just go down the list there.
I deal with a lot of poor kids in the country. You would think 50 years ago, if you were poor, that meant you spend a lot of time outside. But now, it means you probably spend your time in front of the TV or on your iPad or whatever tablet you got. So I've got a lot of kids that don't have, I guess, the supervision or the access to go outside. They think the wood line is actually a firm boundary that they can't step into. So they're out in the middle of nature if they're not experienced.
I think we've already said, I have a lot of kids who come from apartments and same kind of thing. They just don't have the outdoor space to utilize. And for them, there are things inside that are lots more appealing to them.
Can I piggyback on that? I think there's a lack of shared space anymore. Because it used to be there was there still are in apartments, there are common areas that people could use, but I think for whatever reason they're afraid to or don't feel like that's appropriate. But we need to get back to that shared space, I think.
don't have down on our paper, but I think it certainly impacts preschoolers and kindergartners, is that when I started teaching back in the early 80s, the things that I taught my first graders are now being taught in kindergarten. And there's a feeling among many parents and among some educators that they need to start the academics earlier and earlier. And that's impacting our preschools and our kindergartens.
What you saw in the video, the opinion of the pedagogue, that that was too early to start those kinds of things.
It's definitely too early, but that doesn't impact society today, thinking that we have to have people, children having all of the ABCs memorized before they get to kindergarten.
I think we're kind of on a shift back there, because I can feel the pendulum kind of swinging back the other direction. I put 30 or 40 kids outside every day for half their day, and I expected to have a ton of blowback just from kids getting dirty or hurt, whatever. One, they're not getting hurt, they are getting really dirty. The parents are excited about it, they're happy about it, and they understand that we were pushing too far.
How did you make that transition so that the parents could accept that?
That's that.
But we had a couple meetings, and we talked, we kind of shared what it would look like, but I kind of go, it's all or nothing, so we just did it.
You just did it?
And I think there's a whole lot of people talking, and not a whole lot of people.
Katie's doing the same thing.
I do think that we've sort of gone out of a mindset where it's okay now. Stuff that we were watching the video, I look back on it. We were sitting here talking. We're crawling on a little bit older, but that was just sort of the way life was when you go out and experience life. When we talk about like the knives and things, you know, one of the big experiences is when you were old enough to you got that pocket knife. You were trusted because it was a tool. You could go use it. You could do things with. People look at that now and say, yeah, it's almost like child abuse. You know, like if you see a kid up a tree, you call DHS because somebody's not supervising that kid. So I think it's how do we get back into a mindset of exploring. I was sharing that third year teaching a freshman seminar class here. One of the things, these kids don't know how to do anything almost. It's like a groupie like our something broke in our dorm apartment. What are we supposed to do? I'm sick. What do I do? I mean, their skill sets are somebody's going to do something for you, or that you don't have to worry about it or whatever. Versus how do I start figuring out things in my life so I can become independent? And what we saw were very independent learners learning a lot of different ways. And we're just sort of molding everybody the same way, but we've lost a lot of that independent learning process in it. So I just say we've got a real mindset to change. Because I think a lot of people look at that and say, that is really strange. I don't, but I think a lot of people do.
But like Matt says, the pendulum is switched.
But also we were talking, how do we get this into an educational structure where families like your families can connect with that versus families who can't afford to connect with independent programs and those types of things because they value that. And I think that's one of the other big switches in here. You may have a lot of families that would value it, but they don't know how to, they can't financially, they don't know how to connect with that. Or they don't have a voice in their communities to make that happen.
Next.
I think most of what we talked about has already been talked about, but I guess one of the things that we discussed was, and I think it feeds in well, is we have in society, and I think our schools reflect our societies, we have an overabundance of fear, and we have an underabundance of trust. And those two combined means that we call the authorities when we see a child who's not leashed to an adult. And in schools, we do the same with teachers. If they're not under observation at all times and every moment of their day doesn't connect to a standard that connects to an assessment, and not clearly for those of us who are in there to observe them, as opposed to perhaps a teacher who's more perceptive because she understands something greater than the 10 minutes I'm sitting there. Then we lose that trust of the professional, and when we lose the trust of the professional, we essentially just keep adding to the bucket of fear.
I was intrigued by a comment you made in your group about when I asked, where did those kids learn that trust? Because it's not written in a curriculum. Your response?
Well, I think children learn trust because it's given to them, right? So the adults in their lives show them that they trust them, that they give them the responsibilities, and I think teachers do that all the time. And then in turn, it's the same thing. If they see that the other adults in a school are all there working together to make that classroom more successful, they see that there's a trust there. So, oh, the person who is in charge of my teacher trusts my teacher because of their relationship. They see ways to relate to their peers and also to the adults in their lives. So
I would add a little bit onto that though too. I think that that there's a little trust in yourself. You learn to trust yourself when you're given the opportunity to learn how to risk assess and become more skillful at that. And so you take those baby steps to start with. We were talking in our group about the 2-year-olds that maybe think of a 4-inch jump as like a really high jump for them, and but when they become masterful at that, then the 8-inch jump is like the next challenge, and so they learn how to break down those risks and to assess them, and then to become skillful at so the child that's up there 40 feet up in the tree didn't do that the first time he climbed the tree. He climbed to the first branch and learned how to get down, and then he climbed to the second branch and learned how to get down, and now he's confident because he knows what his skill set is.
We, again, same, but we talked more about there wasn't preschool 50 years ago. It was you were home with grandma and mom, and because there wasn't the working parent families, and both of them were, and you learned those life skills that when it was time to go to school, it was like cold turkey, go. Like it was just that. It wasn't, grandma wasn't flashcarding you and sight wording you, and and I think that's hugely what parents do now. They come to me at kindergarten roundup and they say, okay, what do we need to know? All right, she knows how to count, she knows how to do it, and I'm thinking, that's my job. I will teach her how to do that. Let her be a kid, or let her learn those, life skills, cooperation, and following directions, and those kind of things. It doesn't necessarily have to build up on academics, but I also, made the observation with our group is when kids are ready to learn, they learn. So if the child is ready at 7 per se, they're going to learn everything that I'm trying to shove down a 5-year-old's throat in a year. They may learn in 2 weeks, and they got it, and they're gold. But when we put these babies in school who have not had these life experiences, who are not ready, it's a miserable situation for the child and the teacher and the parents who are wondering what's wrong. And nothing's wrong, they need more time. So, that's...
Very good. Any other comments about question 2?
Well, we talked about it just being more litigious society too. So, it's, we as educators may have a belief in, helping children understand the differences between risks and hazards, or allowing them these opportunities to build up their skills and confidence, but at what risk to ourselves, as far as, maybe being sued or having the authorities called on us, or, or those kinds of things that I also think media coverage has really becomes very scary, but and unfortunately I think we make a lot of our own monsters, things that don't really seem larger than they really are, larger problems than they really are. But we also just talked about the, adults hover and protect, and that's just a whole different situation, than before, and which I then think feeds into this whole thing about the college-age child who doesn't know how to solve or do anything because they've always had something hovering, and I don't want you to stub your toe, and I don't want your feelings to be hurt, and any of these kinds of things. I don't want you to fail a test, and I don't, and so I think that's way different than before. There wasn't always the adult in the picture. We were often outside of adult supervision. I'm not saying shouldn't do that. But there are ways, you know, that we can engineer that when you're talking about the preschool level, you know, where children can have that feeling, I'm off by myself and I'm not being supervised, and they can start to develop some of those skills that come along with that by engineering the environment in some cases. You know, maybe it's being underneath a weeping mulberry tree or something, and they think that they're, you know, solitude and by themselves, but they have the opportunity to start to figure out what that feels like, and you know, that freedom, but still within the confines of what our society calls safe and supervised. So yeah, just yeah.
As a child, I never felt unsupervised, even when I was a half a mile from home.
Well, yeah, I think that's right. But I mean, I'm talking about like the hover. Like I can't.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
What to
Yes.
do, you know, at all. Yeah, I can't make any choices on my own because I have like there's all these rules guiding me. Because there's a lot of rules guiding the adults. You know, you talk about DHS. You know, I mean, I was a licensed child care program director for 24 years. You know that. I mean, you can't blink without it having something in the licensing law that you're either doing or
Well, in
not doing.
In one of the videos, the individual said the kids learn from the consequences of their behavior.
Love and logic.
And how do you learn something if you don't experience consequences? If those are all provided for you or anticipated for you, the hovering, how do you gain that?
Just like when they were talking about the fire. The fire is very hot when he touches
Yes,
it.
that's
you think
hot.
he'll do it again?
That's exactly. Well, I think we live in a society where there's a lot of learned helplessness. I mean, the parents kind of fix everything because they're so scared of this horrible world that we live in, you know, and they port those fears on their children and just do everything for them, thinking they're doing the right thing. But so as educators, we have to help them.
And just
do it
our
ourselves.
environment now, you know, you talked about our digital obsessions, but just our I had a child, a 4-year-old, one time that was afraid of the wind outside, terrified him. You know, when he felt the wind on his cheeks, and he had to wear a special hat, you know, so he wasn't so afraid to go outside. And you know, and as I was exploring that with his mother, it was just like, well, why, you know, what in the world about the wind is so, you know, but I'm like, he's never in a windy, like he's never felt that. You go from your home to your car to wherever it is that you're ending up, and everything is air conditioned and modified, and you know, we don't roll the windows down in our cars anymore and feel the wind rushing. You know, I mean, it was a new experience to him that was frightening. So
One of the things also that you saw in all the videos we were watching is the time, the quiet time that was always around the students, even if they were active, and you saw even reflective time going on where they're taking time to think and ponder and to work on these. I think everybody's so busy, we're just reacting, and I don't think even kids today, I don't think kids have reflective time. It's almost like you give reflective time, you get written up in the classroom because you're down. You know what I'm saying? You're down. You're
Downtime.
Downtime.
Yeah.
But one of the things there, you saw a lot. You may have some kids over here just looking at something and being very reflective. Somebody over here busy. So there were a lot of things like that going on. And I think now we're in a generation of parents who, if they're not doing something, if they're not reacting to something, if they're not reacting to every need, so to speak, then that they're not being fulfilled in life. Versus almost like the culture we saw was in Sweden, where it's like pretty easygoing, letting it sort of unfold a little bit, and we're anxious to push life along versus letting it unfold a little bit.
And we wonder why we have hyperactive students. That was addressed, but we've got to run out of time here. So let's move to number 3. Is Chattanooga a prime place to address these issues, or should we move somewhere else? Start there.
Wonderful here.
A plus here.
Outside of just the great outdoor opportunities, it's got a culture of innovation. I think there's excitement in the town. And, everyone's open to new ideas and finding a better solution, a better way of doing things. So I think it's perfect for us.
Perfect time and perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked about the resources. but we talked about the natural resources that we have available, but I think I would also add that because of the timing, I think this is a community who is looking to get involved and looking to help and support. And so I think those two pieces together, yeah, we have huge supports to offer to this type of movement.
And it appears the freedom, especially for public school principals, to take some chances and do some different things.
In fact, a tragic note here, the principal of Woodmore was planning to be here today. And we will carry on with that conversation and plans because she has these same kinds of feelings.
In our group, we noted that Chattanooga has been recognized as an outdoor destination spot, and there's a lot of outdoor things that are available in very close proximity. So we feel that this is a perfect area to do some additional preschool outdoor education.
Yeah, pretty much everything that we mentioned has already been spoken again, but I guess to me, what requires more than anything, especially if you think about a Scandinavian country and having outdoor kindergarten, pre-K in winter, which is, as far as I know, most of their year, it will require tremendous leadership, especially if we're talking about public schools, because that's a much more complicated all 2021. And getting back to my point earlier about trust and fear.
Yes.
Do we trust our principals to work with their early childhood specialists in their school, and also the resources beyond the school, like at the university here, other universities locally, to help provide that kind of support and resources to take some risks and be ready to learn from both the successes and maybe perhaps some of the mistakes that will be made when a kid falls out of a tree.
So you mean when we're grown up and trying new things, it's not unlike kindergarten or preschool where we try things and learn from the consequences? But the consequences now for our age are pretty dire. I'm sorry.
This, to me, is one of the purest forms of STEM, because it's STEM about how things work. And if you can, from a very early age, figure out how things work, then you're much more prepared to deal with other things as you move forward.
That's marvelous.
Yeah, we're a STEM elementary school, and we felt like this was, Forest Kindergarten was gonna give all the.
That was the bud that leads to the STEM.
Yeah, I mean, it basically gives you all those tools and skills that you need to be successful in that classroom, in fifth grade.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would agree. Like, he said, our group talked about a lot of the same things, but also I wanted to add that the area itself has a very diverse demographic, which is, has the resources to pull from, as well as the character of the people who really need this program. So pulling all those things together to make a fair playing ground and to have equal opportunity this area is just dynamite for that, in my opinion.
That's huge. The gang violence, all that we're seeing, and some of the students that, it's real here. I moved here from South Atlanta, and I've been here 11 years, but, reaching these kids at an early age.
Yeah, I moved from Washington, D.C., and they were fighting to get their kids in school, because that was the safe place, and they were coming in at 18 months, and it was like, breaks your heart, but it's very much having all of the parties involved that are all at different levels and resources, and being able to be equal playing ground.
I feel like the answer is yes, and we talked a lot about all these different, I think, pockets of interest that we have kind of in different areas. There's a group called Chattanooga Green Moms. They're very interested in outdoor play. Pulling together, the Creative Discovery Museum has their long-range planning to have a more developed outdoor portion to their programming, and there's so many different areas of expertise and interest that just would love to see some kind of focus group pulled together from all these smaller kind of satellite interests that would really, I think that groundswell would really happen because the interest is there and Chattanooga is really right, I think, for this question to really be wrestled with and to really find some great answers.
Well, with that, we're going to wind up. We have all of this on video, and we have your notes that you have provided with the answers to the questions. We have one more assignment before you can leave, and that is 2 questions. You will each have a sheet of paper. The first question is, what is the most important idea or thought that you leave with today? What's the most important thing you learned that you're walking out with? The second one is, what is one, and it can be more than one, but what is an unanswered question relative to the purpose of our meeting? What is the question that you leave with today? So that we can begin to address the questions that result from this kind of a discussion. And I really want to thank you. You've been very energetic and focused, and appreciate your involvement. Thank you.
Thank you.